One of the hearings I chaired, we had testimony from a guy named Dr. Epstein.
Oh, yeah, I know about it. Yeah.
And he's a psychologist, used to be the editor of Psychology Today. He's an academic. He's, by the way, not a conservative. He's a liberal Democrat who voted for Hillary Clinton and openly supported Hillary Clinton. And he did empirical research on Google's manipulative search outcomes. So it's interesting psychology. When you type in a search, the autocorrect, the auto fill in, not the autocorrect, but what automatically populates, makes a huge difference. And the first few stories that come up make a huge difference. And there was a dramatic differential between when you typed in Hillary Clinton, it would auto-populate good things.
Yeah, all good things, yeah.
When you typed in Donald Trump, it would auto-populate bad things. And the stories that would come up would be predominantly good stories for Hillary, predominantly bad stories for Trump. And what was interesting is Dr. Epstein did the study, and he concluded that in 2016, Google's deceptive search outcomes shifted 2.4 million votes to Hillary Clinton. And he said this as a Hillary Clinton supporter, but he was horrified, but he also projected, he said in 2015, he said big tech is getting worse, it's getting more aggressive, they could move as many as 15 million votes to the Democrats in 2020. And so I think it's a huge threat.
Now that we've gotten the important stuff out of the way, let's talk about big tech, because you've been right in the center of this thing. As you know, I've been fighting it from my garage for the last 5 years. Trump did this executive action. 230 is the what do you call it? It's not a bill. It's a
it's section 230 of a bill called Communications Decency Act.
Right. So basically, what he did was strip some protections from the big boys, from Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Now, my personal preference, and I think we're pretty close on this, the libertarian side is you don't want the government running around sending regulators to these companies, because that's not going to do good. But stripping protections, to me, seemed like the right idea. Do you agree it was the right idea? Is it enough? Is it not enough, et cetera?
So I think it is the right idea. It's something I'd been urging Trump to do for 3 years. So I'm glad that the administration did it. Listen, I agree with your sensibility. Nobody wants government free speech police. I mean, that would be a terrible outcome.
Well, some people do, but
nobody who's not insane, and that's a qualifier. We can talk about some more, because there are a lot of people that fall into that category. But government free speech police would be a terrible outcome. But what big tech is doing, it's deliberate, it's conscious, it's naked. It's abusive and it's dangerous. I think it's the single biggest threat to free speech and democracy we have in this country. Because big tech has become a monopoly, controlling the instruments of communication. And, I've chaired multiple hearings in the Senate on big tech censorship. And one of the hearings we talked about a document that Google had prepared. It's called The Good Censor. So they prepared, it's PowerPoint, about 50-page long. And it talks about how the old vision of the internet was the free speech, laissez-faire internet, where people could speak and say what they wanted. And then it talked about the new vision of the internet, and this is Google's own words, is the European-style censorship model. And by the way, the 4 companies that Google identified as implementing it were Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. This is a conscious decision, and the dangers are enormous. So the question is, how do you fix it? If it is a problem, we can have a long discussion about whether it's a problem, although they're not hiding it anymore.
Yeah, I think most sane people at this point would agree that even people that disagree with us politically on this, I think most people realize that the extraordinary amount of power is a problem one way or another.
So it's interesting, the political debate, though, one of the talking points of big tech and the left is they don't engage in censorship. And the reason they say that is they say, well, there are no objective data that prove we do. And it's, there's the old aphorism of the guy who kills his parents and then pleads mercy on the court because he's an orphan. It's true. There are no objective data because big tech controls all the data. And there's zero transparency, zero accountability. So you can use anecdotes. And I've gone through lots and lots of specific anecdotes. But every time you ask big tech, and I've done it in writing, I've done it in hearings, simple questions. All right, in the 2018 election cycle, how many posts from Republican candidates for office did you block or shadow ban? How many posts from Democratic candidates for office did you block or shadow ban? There are objective answers to that. I mean, there is a number.
Yeah.
And they know the number, and they refuse to answer it and then say there are no data. And so how do you fix it? I think one way to fix it is getting rid of the special immunity from liability that big tech has, that Congress gave them.
So that's 230, right?
That's 230.
Okay.
And the reason 230 was passed, Congress believed big tech would be a neutral public forum. In other words, it wasn't fair to sue Facebook for a comment made by an individual commenter because they weren't the speaker, it was someone else. And so that was Congress's reasoning. So we're going to give big tech this immunity from liability because it's third-party speakers and we want to see the internet grow. Mm-hmm. Well, what's happened is big tech changed their mind. They said we're not going to be, to use the language of the Google document, the laissez-faire free speech place anymore. We're going to censor. Well, you know what? If they're going to silence views they disagree and promote views they agree with, they don't deserve, I don't believe, as a public policy matter, a special protection for liability. There's also the antitrust laws. Google is a monopoly. By any measure, big tech is richer, stronger, more powerful than AT&T was when it was broken up under the antitrust laws. They're bigger than U.S. Steel was. A line from The Godfather, we're bigger than U.S. Steel. Well, they're bigger than U.S. Steel. And that abuse of power. So you want to talk about what the Trump administration did on Section 230 will be challenged. It's at the FCC. There'll be litigation. The real bite here is federal antitrust litigation, which I have urged the president to pursue, I've urged the vice president to pursue, I've urged the attorney general to pursue, I've urged the chairman of the Federal Trade Commission to pursue, I've urged the White House chief of staff to pursue, I've urged the White House counsel to pursue, to force the transparency, to get the answers, and to stop their naked bias.
Are you worried, though, that as we sit here right now in the middle of July, only 3-4 months before an election, that in a certain way that the ship has already sailed, the damage that they've done, and even if you could get everything you wanted tomorrow, past tomorrow, by the time the processes and the systems are implemented, congratulations, the election's passed.
I am deeply worried about it. At one of the hearings I chaired, we had testimony from a guy named Dr. Epstein.
Oh, yeah, I know about it. Yeah.
And he's a psychologist, used to be the editor of Psychology Today. He's an academic. He's, by the way, not a conservative. He's a liberal Democrat who voted for Hillary Clinton and openly supported Hillary Clinton. And he did empirical research on Google's manipulative search outcomes. So it's interesting psychology. When you type in a search, the autocorrect, the auto-fill-in, not the autocorrect, but what automatically populates, makes a huge difference. And the first few stories that come up make a huge difference. And there was a dramatic differential between when you typed in Hillary Clinton, it would auto-populate good things.
Yeah, all good things, yeah.
When you typed in Donald Trump, it would auto-populate bad things. And the stories that would come up would be predominantly good stories for Hillary, predominantly bad stories for Trump. And what was interesting is Dr. Epstein did the study, and he concluded that in 2016, Google's deceptive search outcomes shifted 2.4 million votes to Hillary Clinton. And he said this as a Hillary Clinton supporter, but he was horrified, but he also projected, he said in 2015, he said big tech is getting worse, it's getting more aggressive, they could move as many as 15 million votes. to the Democrats in 2020. And so I think it's a huge threat.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.